Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is David Landers. It's a new podcast. It's promoting my centre called Shadow to the Light, and we are based in the southwest of France. We offer a complete holistic approach to many forms of therapy, which would be for those that are seeking the next phase of their life, who have come into troubles with, let's say, the aftermath of alcohol abuse, the aftermath of being in a toxic relationship, the aftermath of just feeling a bit lost on their journey through life. And what we like to offer at Shadow to the Light is a real surreal place where you can find some tranquility. You can come away from the hustle and bustle of daily life. I mean, I know life's slowed down a bit for everyone in these times at the moment, and that will lead me into the subject I want to talk about today, but just a little bit more about my centre. It's in memory of my late mother, who I lost through alcoholism. It was something that creeped up on her, and I had this idea that I wanted to, after my own struggles with alcohol, wanted to reach in and help people, help me, help them. I think we're in this all together. I think any form of therapy, we need to be humble enough to accept that we're only as good as our client or our challenged soul wants us to be. We can give them, we can give them the keys, but it's them who has to find the lock, and we can help them along that journey. So, like I said, I'll be doing monthly podcasts just to try and keep everyone informed, hopefully informed, shall I say, about all the challenges that are out there. And I wanted to start today with, like I said, something that's very important to me, and it's the issue surrounding alcoholism. It's a wide subject. We know that there's many different beliefs that are put on the drinking culture of today. We know it's widely accepted. So I had done a lot of research on this subject. And again, I truly believe that every challenged person who succumbs to the temptation of letting alcohol control huge parts of their life, they're all completely individual with their problems. That's why I believe that we can't just have a one-size-fits-all remedy. That's why at Shadow to the Light, the centre, when I have clients come to visit me, I really ask them what they want out of it. Within our walking therapy, we get an energy going, we get out in nature, and we let the client, or we let our friends, we call them, lead us to their introspection, their regression work, and we try and help them. So I put it as in, they come with a toolbox that's half empty, and we give them extra tools to cope with the next step along the way to get over the bump in the road. We do exceptional talk therapy in groups. We do a great thing, writing therapy journal work, which is, I think, it's an exceptional tool for anyone to be able to use. We also do stuff like we get together and we cook good food, and we show that there's possibilities, there's huge possibilities in a daily life that we can start by piece, brick by brick, to rebuild ourselves. So I want to start by reading some of the extracts from my blog, and then I want to touch on each point, and hopefully that will kind of resonate with any of you guys that are listening out there. So it starts like this. Have you ever awoken from a dream that seemed so real that you were not sure if you were still in a dream world or you were back in the room? Well, imagine waking up and knowing that nightmare of the night before had actually happened. Now, when we look into that, guys, what we find is people who get in trouble with alcohol, there'll be a defining moment, there'll be a defining argument, there'll be an issue. It could be like a driving offence, it could be, getting in trouble in a pub, it could be a display of violence. But there's always that defining moment that when you hear a lot of people talk about their challenges, they will take you along their journey of leading up to the point where they were at the bottom of the bottle. And it's what I like to say, that it's kind of a metaphorically speaking, it reminds me a little bit of the impact before the car crash. You know it's coming, you know what you're involved with, and you know what you've got to deal with after. So we go out with all the good intentions of, this is a generally speaking what a week would be of someone who's gone out, they've met friends with good intentions, they've had a few drinks before they've gone out, they've met their mates in the pub and they've just carried on drinking and drinking. And then they've got themselves in a load of bother. They may have got into a fight. They may have got behind a car, a steering wheel of a car. They may have crashed into another car. And it's that impact, that trouble that is normally the defining moment. But is it? So the reminder of the events that is pounding in your head is the sweat on the pillow. And even though it's hazy, you've reached the bottom of the bottle. When the bottom of the bottle has been reached, the rock bottom as it is known, and that's what it is, guys, isn't it? We feel like we can't go any further. It's almost like that last situation, that last message, that last bit of trouble we got ourselves into is almost like an inner voice saying, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. How many times can you break up a family? How many times can you upset your friends? How many times can you lose a job? How many times can you do this kind of stuff? And I've fast forwarded it into the last dregs of drinking, but why don't we talk a little bit about why do people start their descent into what I like to call the alcohol slope? If I go from a personal experience, I grew up in a very dysfunctional house brought on by alcoholism. Now, that wasn't to say that my parents, who were heavy drinkers, were from an Irish background. We're Irish. I was born in England, but, everything about me is Irish. My two brothers as well. But our daily life consisted of the workings of parents who were drinking every day. Now, that doesn't mean that they were rolling drunk every day, but drink was in our life. It was our environmental. And let's put them words together. Our environment becomes our environmental. And we were nurtured unconsciously, subconsciously by our parents, that our weekends would consist of sitting in the corner of a pub. Mum and dad were doing what a lot of people do, socialising, but everything that our nurturing was, our upbringing, was all surrounded by alcohol, Now, there'd be nights when my mum and dad would get in from a pub and they would be fine, but then there'd be certain weekends where they both would have had too much, and the inner demons that were lurking inside them would be opened up. Their gateways would be opened up. And being young children growing up, environmental, you're a tape recorder. From 0 to 7, we know we're working from the subconscious. So you're just downloading information. Even up to the age of 18, you're still downloading information because your brain's not fully formed. So this was all just getting recorded by me and my brothers. Now, that does not make my mum and dad bad people. It just means that in their life, their drinking was unmanaged. So there wasn't no reference point for them to go, what example are we setting out to our children? So we look at situations like that. And the reason I do say when clients come to my centre that every case of someone who's challenged with alcohol is different, is because I believe my problems with alcohol started from learned behaviour. But then how can you say that about someone who's in their 20s, let's say, and may lose a brother or a sister and may just start drinking then to take the edge off of it, and then they get unmanaged drinking through that grief? Then we have the situation of two different scenarios, same problem, but there's a different cognitive problems going on, relation towards drink, causation of the alcoholism. So what we describe alcoholism as an addiction, guys, is doing something that we know is detrimental to us and others, but we still continue. And let's think about that. We constantly, when we start going through the levels of going from someone who uses drink just as a safety net, shall we say, to gain more confidence, to go to meet a girl on a first date, to go out with the lads for a bit of bravado, to go and meet a boy on the first date. We start that process of, we relate ourselves to having a good time, to having alcohol, to having more confidence, to having alcohol. It's almost a loosening of our restrictions that we put on ourselves. Like normally when we're in our conscious way of being, we are quite cautious of how we are. We're not maybe as loose and as free. We know that when we're biochemically changed by alcohol or other substances, that our inhibitions, they are free. That's why some people, they become a bit more louder, they become, more boisterous. So it goes, why do addicts continue to use? Well, it's because the misery of the drink, and this is the substance they use, that they bring into their lives. It's the thing that when it starts progressing into a problem, I truly believe that people with challenges of alcohol and substance abuse, they know that they're doing things that are detrimental to themselves, but it's starting to run away from them. It's starting to become bigger than them. And what I mean by that is they associate so much of their life, their whole day starts becoming, when do I get my next drink? When do I get the opportunity to go out again and get hammered? When do I get the opportunity to get out of this reality of a boring life, a mundane life? And this is another reason why a lot of people descend into wanting to be changed biochemically and alcohol-induced states and drug-induced states, because their life could be uninspiring. It may not be from outsiders think it's uninspiring, but to them, maybe they've got secondary conditions going on within themselves that they haven't quite addressed. We're going to touch on the subconscious problems and the shadow work that we do as well at the centre within these podcasts. So what starts happening, guys, is imagine the scenario: you've gone out, you've created mayhem. You've come in, you've upset your wife, the kids, you may have had an argument with your friends, you may have upset your parents, you may have got in a fight. So you get up the next day and you're feeling terrible. You've got a hangover, your body, physically you're feeling terrible. And what's one of the most favourite expressions that you'll hear from people is, have another drink, have a hair of the dog, that'll cure you, that'll make you feel better, And if you've had a completely reckless night and you know that you're being, let's say, almost ostracised by your family, what can tend to happen with people who don't realise they've got a problem? They'll start drinking again. And all that anxiety and remorse that they may have started feeling from the night before, that'll disappear. And then this belief, this monster from the night before gets reinforced that, I was right what I said, I was right what I done, and then the whole filter of what we think is, what we know to be right and what we know to be wrong, it's just gone. We're just in an alcohol-induced state. So it's we have the shame of waking up in the morning after what we've done, and then the only way to get rid of that shame, the only way to stop us making feel shit, is the thing that made us feel that bad in the first place. So you can see it becomes like a vicious circle. So in fact, you start having the tail starts wagging the dog. And this is what we should try to say to our guests at Shadow to the Light, our centre, is unless you come with an open heart and you come with kindness to yourself and you come with honesty to yourself and want to do the real looking within. And this doesn't mean to shame yourself. That's where the kindness comes in. It comes in the sense that the biggest liars on this world are people who have addictions, because they're in denial. And the reason they're in denial, because as I mentioned, there's a loathing, there's a shame, there's there's this feeling incapacitated by something's got a hold of them, something's more powerful than them. And unfortunately, as we know, a lot of drugs that people use and alcohol, it's something that you can't hide very well, because alcohol, you can smell it on people's breath, the way they speak, the way they act. It's one of them. It's the same with drugs, when people get stoned, you can tell by their eyes, and they probably ask questions 3 or 4 times a day. Have you been drinking? You have that with someone who knows they've generally got something that's getting out of control. It's like a labelling of them. They start feeling an inner shame. And the only thing that gets rid of that inner shame is the reinforcement of the very thing that's making them feel shameful. So we try and take away the stigma of everyone in life needs their hand held. Everyone in life gets lost in their journey. Everyone in life from time to time don't feel like they have the answers. They feel a bit overwhelmed. And alcohol being the way it's so widely accepted, we know at weddings and at funerals and at birthdays and at christenings and nights after work and at meals, it's advertised everywhere. It looks cool. It's so widely accepted that, and it's so easy because it changes our reality. It changes that we actually use it as one of the first tools of self-medicating. And I mentioned earlier about shadow work, and shadow work's a huge part of the centre of, there's parts of ourselves that we're ashamed of, that have been shamed in our unconscious. Growing up, we may have, as I mentioned, growing up in a dysfunctional house, being brought up by alcoholic parents who are in their drunken stupor, who may have spoken down to us. It may be a weekend where we're being told to not to be stupid, we're being told to be quiet, we're told big boys don't cry, we're told, and it's parts of our personality that gets hidden beneath all of that, and it lays passive. And what happens, it bubbles beneath the surface. So we can go out with our friends, we don't realise it's underneath there. And that's an explanation why sometimes when you look around the town centres, that there's a man or a lady who have gone out looking lovely and well done, and they're in control of their emotions, their feelings. And then when they go beyond with their alcohol intake, this gateway of passive anger, passive rage, passive frustrations, almost like the hurt in a child has come exploding to the surface, because you have to think it takes a lot of energy to keep that hidden, to keep suppressing them emotions. It takes a lot, and it's like I call it the corkscrew, the coil, the spring that's being tightened and tightened and tightened, and then when we get loosened up by alcohol or drugs, boom, and then it's just, that's why we get this out of control behaviour, this out of control verbal attacks done by people who have got inner problems. They're hurting. It's people who have been sexually abused. It's people who have been abandoned. It's people and they've kept this all in, they haven't been able to deal with it, and they turn to drink to soothe the pain. It's like a self-medication, and then the alcohol then just lets it rip. We hear things in Ireland, it's an old saying, why the drinks are in, the wits are out. But it should not be that. It should be more like, why the drink's in, the pain will come out. And that's the question we have to ask ourselves. With a lot of people with challenges, I would say in the high 80 to 85% people, there's an inner trauma. There's an inner pain that is something that needs to be addressed. And going back to the beginning of this podcast, when I mentioned slightly that before we get into that unmanageable rage or it becoming more and more regular, our anger coming out, there is little red flags that pop up. There'll be irritations. There'll be, we all know how it starts. We start off, as I said, to start drinking, to be sociable, have a bit of confidence. That could be once a week as we're becoming into 15, 16, into our 20s. Then we start having a couple of nights a week, 3 nights a week, midday sessions. Then before we know it, we're getting a bottle of wine after work. We're sitting indoors, we're drinking on our own. Or then we start drinking heavily. And then what starts happening, we start building up a resistance to it, and then we have a dependency. So we need to drink more to get the same reaction. And this is what starts becoming unmanaged. And then we have the point to the functioning alcoholic, then we have the dependent alcoholic, and then we also have then the physical aspects of it's more dangerous to stop. Now, there's a lot of theories based on, is it learned behaviour? Is it a brain disease? Alcoholism, I'm talking about. Addiction, I'm talking about. Is it self-medicating? Is it nurturing? I will keep saying this, that because we're such beautiful individual souls and we all hurt differently and we all feel loved differently, it's all a collective, but it's a tweak here and there, that we all stop and start for different reasons. And that's why we need to really be kind of, as counsellors and people who want to coach people to go further in their lives, we need to be able to really listen, to understand what our clients are telling us, what our friends are telling us. Because we can't keep coming at it from our belief, because the reason why I drank, as I mentioned earlier, will be a completely different reason to why someone else is drunk. And the reason why I gave up could be a different reason to why someone else wants to give up. So, look, I hope what I'm saying is not taken away from people who can go out and have a real sociable glass of wine, with a nice meal. These are people who I believe have got solid boundaries, solid bases. The people I'm dealing with are people who are kind of lost inside. They're trying to fill a void somehow, and it's a void that eventually people discover. But here's the trick. We are not meant to continuously putting ourselves in resisting or refusal. It's difficult for human beings to keep refusing. Oh, I'm going to refuse sugar. I'm going to refuse chocolate. I'm going to refuse good food. I'm going to refuse this. I'm going to refuse alcohol. I'm going to refuse. What we need to understand is, why am I refusing it? Why is it no good for me? Why is it affecting me the way it does? And it's getting underneath the real cause. So it's like when I tried so many times to give up drinking when I was younger. And I thought, if I just go cold turkey, if I just stop drinking, be no bother. And this is a key element of the Shadow to the Light Centre, what we do. After the initial high of giving up alcohol, your body gets an endorphin kick. It gets like all the good hormones are flowing because you're not waking up with that hangover. You're not waking up upsetting anyone. What can happen, guys, and this is the key, you'll have a crash. Happens to a lot of, you know, ex-alcoholics, you know, it happens to a lot of us where we look around and go, what next? We haven't got no plan B, and we haven't understood the reason why we decided to give up alcohol. We've just looked at it as where we're giving ourselves a punishment. We're stopping ourselves from an enjoyment. And this is where the denial process will kick in again, because we'll be like, why should I deny myself pleasures in life? You know, look at my life now. It's not very exciting. It's not, and it's like any form of abuse, any form of self-abuse as well. It will always seem not as interesting as when we're getting shit-faced or we're getting, head down in the toilet, because we're living a normal life. But what that does when we have to come out of that induced state, that distortion of our reality, is we have to sit down with ourselves and understand who we're running away from. What are we running away from? And this is why I encourage everyone who comes to the centre is honesty and kindness. Because when you ask yourselves the right question, get prepared, because here you ask themselves the right question is halfway to finding the right answer. Now, maybe you do drink because you've done a lot of ex-army people will drink to extremes because they're trying to get away from the atrocities and the terrible things that they've seen and done. You know, maybe you drink because you've messed up your marriage. You know, maybe you drink because, as I said, you've lost someone. So you can see that the pattern forming, that there is a causation, a cause of why someone may have turned to self-medicating. And this is something we like to deal with. We don't initially at the centre take people who are looking, we're not a detox program here, guys. We're a program that enables the challenge soul, our clients, the ex-alcoholic. I use all labels with my clients, because whatever they like to feel easy with. You know, no one likes to be labelled something that they don't want to be called, a druggie, a drunk. So I like to refer to them as what, first and foremost, by their name. But, you know, if they want to stand up and say they've got a problem and they're like in an AA meeting, so be it. This is a holistic approach to the next phase after the drying out. This is an approach that they can work with, as I said, ongoing for the rest of their life. You know, we don't promise in the 4-day stay that you're going to come here and you're going to magically be cured and it's going to be, no, this is us saying to you, here's the tools. You can go further with this now, you know, with our follow-on programs, you know, online and that, you can go much further and much further. And here's a big thing with giving up anything that's detrimental to you. The hardest challenge is going from a point of when you woke up, you've had your worst nightmare, you really want to give up the poison, your choice of poison, and imagining being in a place of blue skies and sunshine, of recovery. Because the journey from being that person who, let's just say, feels they're in the gutter, to a person who's got his life back on track, can seem 100 years away. So what we like to try and do at Shadow to the Light is go from 0.1% improvement every day. Don't be comparing yourself to anyone else, only who you was yesterday. Are you better than you was yesterday by 0.1%? And we worked out a strategy that within 30 days, within 365 days, 0.1% improvement is a 30% improvement on you. So let's break that down. If you come to the centre and we've taught you how to take up extreme walks, you've improved your fitness by 30%. You improve your knowledge of what's the catalyst for your turning inwards, or your self-medicating, and you get knowledge about that and you work on that every day. That's 30% improvement. If you want to eat healthier, if you want to pick up sports, and the shadow is, it's about being whole. It's about loving the parts of yourself that you've had pushed down, that you have been made to be ashamed of, and that's what you're running away from. That drinking is or that drug using is what's been covering them parts that you feel like and you've been made to feel ashamed of. And what we're trying to suggest at Shadow to Light Centre is, we don't try and do the all or nothing. Like a lot of people will give up a substance or alcohol and then start going to the gym, and they'll get hooked on the gym. Now, obviously that's a better alternative, but all you're doing is substituting one addiction to another addiction. And we know, if we look at a whole being, and I always use this analogy, it's like a cake. And if we can cut that cake into 20 slices, and we try and improve like our sleep, number one importance, sleep. If we try and improve, our gratitude, if we try and improve, do we have our job to go to? Are we working towards a particular job we want to go? That gives us inspiration. Our eating, our fitness, our relationships, our family, our outlook on life, and you get the picture. But there's also, am I allowed to be assertive? Yes, because that gets shamed out of us. Am I allowed to be confident as a lady, as a male? It's all the stuff that we may deem negative. Am I allowed to speak my mind? Do I need just alcohol to be more confident? No. You can embrace being an introvert. There's some great people who are introverts. So we also, at the centre, we try and give ourselves knowledge of, when we label someone, we are literally taking away any empathy and any compassion that we may feel in our hearts. And so many times I hear, via the work I do, or I hear, other people say, there's a down and out in the street. He gets labelled, I'll look at him like, down and out. And the poor man's like, or lady are asking for some money and that. What do you want it for? Just to get, boozed up or this. Sometimes it's a freezing cold night. And we don't know that person's story. We don't know if that person's lost their home via hardship. We don't know if they've lost a wife. We don't know if they've lost a kid. We don't know if they're a refugee getting out of a war-torn country. And within our understanding and our compassion to our fellow human being, we can start understanding what kind of kindness we have to show ourselves, what kind of honesty we have to say, that could have been me, that could be me. And at Shadow to the Light Centre, we encourage, and we won't have it any other way, that no matter what you tell us as a group or what you tell me individually, there won't be no judgmental hawk flying over you. There will be just a place of tranquility, a place of confidence where you can speak as much as you want, or you can just absorb as much as you want. And it's a real powerful tool, because we all work at our own pace, yeah? And that's why I always break it down to the minimum of 0.1%. It's a strategy that worked for me personally, and it's a strategy I believe that 365 days, guys, is a year. It's something you can do every day. Sitting on the end of your bed, as the great Jordan Peterson says, this is how you could instantly improve your day. If you're drying out, or you could sit on the end of your bed and go, how can I improve my day today? And you look around your house. You could start putting your house in order. You know, organise your bedroom. If your bedroom's a tip, organise it, because that improves your day the next day. You're waking up in a place that is better than it was yesterday. And they're the little strategies that we can do. You know, if you've only walked 100 steps today, we can walk 1,000 steps tomorrow. So you get my drift. So I heard a professor once say a condition of learned behaviour or reflex thinking is a combination that can lead to a thing called CNAP pruning. And within a reinforced cycle of addiction, the pruning can become so strong. Basically, CNAP pruning is training the brain to be focused only on the mission at hand, like one tunnel vision. So basically, when we become dependent on something that our body craves, that our mind is just driven to calm the cravings, our whole thought process, our one tunnel vision, our day is just set up. It's just to go and get what the brain is asking us to get. I call it the ring of steel cognitively, because if we think of when we do a new subject, if we are learning a new diploma, the first day, the first week, it seems like complete jargon to us, because what we're actually doing is we're using smaller parts of the brain that haven't been trained to think about the subject. So the information that's going in it doesn't feel like second nature. It feels gobbledygook, fingers and thumbs. But the more we start thinking about it, the more we start doing this thing, we start enhancing, we start making them points of connectivity of information stronger, 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 stronger. So our CNAP pruning is actually making them points of connection stronger. So if all we're doing is thinking about our fix, we're just focusing on that. That's why people lose their jobs. That's why people lose their relationships. That's why people can't see what's going wrong in their life, because the voice of reason is getting quieter and quieter and quieter in their mind. It's becoming like so far distant, because they've just reinforced I call it the troll under the bridge, the voice of, no, you need to go and get this. That's why people will continue using, because it's a reinforcement. It's just like going and getting their fix. That's all they're focused on. And that's why I say that there needs to be this interrupt to that. Like, God be good, it's never a smashed car or some time in prison or a divorce or something that's so fundamentally impossible to ignore that that's what breaks the connection normally between a real strong craving, learned behaviour. So you see, the brain is being driven by learned thinking patterns, almost being moulded to seek out the least path to resistance. And it is. If you wake up in the morning, as I mentioned earlier on, and you're feeling absolute rubbish, it seems, and your body's aching through the withdrawals of alcohol, not a lot of people who have got problems with that substance will want to go and sweat it out in the gym, or want to go, and what they want to do is the least point of resistance, which is the hair of the dog. It's almost them just keep topping themselves up, and they feel like they're feeling better, but that's why their drinking will become earlier and earlier and earlier, because they had to keep topping up to feel normal. It's so, the workings of the brain is a thing of great beauty, but it's also a tool to keep us surviving. It wants to go about its day with a minimum of fuss. Let's think about this. Why do we say when embarking on a learning process, I've just touched on that, it's something that, once, when we start drinking, the first taste of alcohol is disgusting because our body hasn't learned the taste of it. But once we start forcing it down our neck, so like we start learning, like a diploma, we start getting used to doing it every day, then it starts becoming the palate starts kind of appreciating it, or we start getting used to it. So the more we learn a dominant thinking pattern, we start pruning all the surrounding synapses. So what basically happens, guys, is the main part of the brain just becomes focused on being that addiction. And when I say the surrounding synapses, I'm calling this your responsibility synapse. You're going to work, you're being a good boyfriend, you're being all of the things that bring most of us a balanced, healthy life. Now remember, relationship problems can bring around drinking, divorces, children, this kind of stuff, worrying over children. So, but generally speaking, guys, we become less responsible for our actions because, how can we be responsible? First and foremost, we're not thinking straight. It's changing us biochemically, it's changing us. And the more we drink, the more out of control we are. Here's the thing. I think somewhere in the Arabic history, there's a term called the al-kul. And if I'm right in saying this, that the translation basically means from al-kul, the spirits within. And you'll see a lot of Muslim countries, there's not a lot of drinking in Muslim countries, it's forbidden, and because they have a belief, not only is it a God-driven belief, all of this stuff, but they have a belief that when you consume so much alcohol, that spirits enter your being. And when I first read about this, I was almost like, wow. But then when I started thinking of what people actually say after they've completely got rotten drunk, or they've completely got out their face on cocaine or whatever your poison is, you'll hear stuff the next day, people go, I don't know what got into me. I can't remember a thing. I blacked out. Now, if you link them, there's some truth behind it then, isn't there? Because the horrible actions people do, the things people say, when you look at a friend who's gone beyond and you go, I didn't know he had that in him. He's such a normal man, he's such a lovely guy, such a lovely lady normally. And that is like an evil entity. Is that any different to what the Arabic historical term is, alcohol, what they're suggesting? I would say it wasn't too different. So it's just, we need to, at the core level, understand that today's world can bring about loads of problems. We go around our lives, and personally speaking, when I learned to understand that life isn't just a bed of roses, life doesn't just give you everything that you feel like you deserve. And once you start realizing that we're given all these types of emotions and understanding of emotions, because we will suffer grief, we will suffer hardship, we will suffer heartbreak, we will suffer, maybe financial worries. But we have the coping mechanisms within. We have them because we wouldn't have the knowledge of our emotions and our feelings. And it's about, as we do at Shadow to the Light, it's about us finding who we are, who we really are as a person. And I always look at it as this again. It's like we walk around our house, we inspect the outside, we inspect the gutters. If we've got a leaky gutter, the first thing we do is we get up there and fix it. But when do we ever look in at ourselves? When do we ever take the time to ask ourselves, am I okay? When do we check in on our, as I said earlier about the 20 slices of a cake, like, how is my sleeping patterns going? How am I eating? How's my relationship going? How's my social life going? How's this doing? How's my fitness? Am I matching, is my job matching my ambitions that I set out for myself? And is this is what you call, what we encourage at Shadow to the Light, is the once in a week self-maintenance check-in. The once a week self-maintenance check-in. If our pet is not well, first thing we do, we take them to the vets. Why do we wait for such a part of our life that would be full of misery, alcoholism, drug addiction, to start thinking, I had a huge problem catch up on me, and I just took the notice of it? Why didn't I fix my own internal gutter? Why didn't I give myself a makeover? Car needs an oil change. What do? Straight down the garage, ask the mechanic to put fresh oil in. What about us when we're drinking too much? What about a detox? What about, So this podcast is just an opening of basically what we do at Shadow to the Light, and it was a tiny brief explanation about a topic like alcohol. I will be every month doing micro topics all to do with alcoholism, more in-depth details of how we get into alcohol and how we can get out of it. Toxic relationships, the same thing. Why do we attract the same partners? What's narcissistic abuse? What's codependency? I also get into, confidence issues. There's also work we like to do. As I said, a real important part of the Shadow Centre is shadow work, building ourselves up from inside out. So we're building internal foundations to make ourselves strong, core belief. So I hope this opening's been refreshing for everyone. I hope it's been knowledgeable. I hope that you will listen in, and I hope you'll give me some feedback. Like I said, you can contact me, davelanders47@gmail.com, or contact me on Facebook, Shadow to the Light. I also do a blog, Shadow to Light, Dave Landers, wordpress.com. You can read some of my stuff there. But like I said, I'll be doing 3 podcasts. I'll be trying to set up some interviews with some real alcoholic specialists who've recovered, and they've got some foundations and charities, all of this kind of stuff that I'll be trying to set up in future podcasts. So thanks for listening, and good evening.